So let's get started. The first section that I'd like to deal with this is the first section is the arrest process, the detention, and the arraignment. And so interpreters, I think, get involved in all of these processes. So, but the initial process obviously is the officer will detain someone, they'll arrest someone for a DUI, and then they will bring them into the station or to the hospital for a blood test. And typically the officers, when they do stop someone, are doing field tests on the street, which involve a number of tests. Now, for the most part, almost all the cases I've seen, the officers are not using an interpreter to do the field test on the street, which it can be very difficult for people to understand because there's a whole series of instructions that they provide for field tests. Now, by the way, field tests are sobriety tests that are on the street and they're voluntary. So when someone's stopped for a DUI, they do not have to do a field test. The officer asks them, would you like to do voluntary field sobriety test? And a lot of times people are so nervous at that time when they hear voluntary, it doesn't quite register or they just don't understand it. But typically most people, if they're asked to do something by an officer when they're in that situation, they're going to go ahead and do it. But the officers are essentially, for the most part, doing this in English. Now, if they realize that there's a language barrier on the street, they oftentimes will try to get an officer who speaks that language to come to do the field test, which is typically a Spanish-speaking officer. There's not a lot of officers that are speaking other languages, but even with the Spanish-speaking officers, there's not many. But a lot of officers will make an effort to, wait a minute, we've got a language barrier here, and then call and get another officer who speaks some Spanish. But if that's, or whatever language the particular defendant needs.